Rinpoche, there are two questions from the Japanese room. There's no name. Wishing not to be separate, isn't that an attachment?
Yes, it is an attachment. And even to have the notion that there is an enlightenment and there is a samsara is also a flaw. But path is a flaw. But at the same time, we need to use the path. So Buddha himself said, if you want to go to the other shore, you need to take a boat. Once you reach the other shore, you abandon the boat. So for many of deluded beings like us, at the moment, we need some sort of a direction. Either you have this wish to never separate from the Mahaguru, or wish to never separate from the online shopping. Which one do you choose? Most likely, you'll be less stressed if you put more emphasis on not to separate from the Guru. Online shopping is going to really bring lots of misery. Okay?
The second question from the Japanese room is, when you say mind or Mahaguru or inner and outer, I get an objectification. But how should I think about silence in terms of this prayer?
I need to define what is silence, because if you are talking about a silence in the sense of, like not talking, like actual silence, literally, that can be, beneficial, but that can be also a pain in the neck too, right? So it depends on the motivation, the view, and all of that. But if the term silence that you are using, if you are using this to refer to not to fall into extreme, then yes, then I think you are close to what we are talking about, Mahaguru, or the nature of the mind.
Rinpoche, this is coming from Leki Wangpo. Rinpoche, I'll say it a little bit slow so the translators can translate the question. I have been practicing Guru Rinpoche ever since I knew the mantra. Doubt has been coming, and I did not get an opportunity to clarify from any Rinpoche till now, and it has become an obstacle for my practice. I'm in my late 30s. The doubt is that, is it necessary for me to practice any other deity? Is it okay for me to just practice Guru Rinpoche my whole life and don't bother to practice deities such as Vajrasattva and Tara? Dharma is my Mewa deity, and sometimes I feel doubt that I'm not being able to practice Dharma.
If you can take my word and trust, and I say this with the backing from all the Tantra and the Shastras and all the masters of the past and the present, just practicing the Guru. Guru Rinpoche is Guru. Guru Rinpoche is the Deva. Guru Rinpoche is the Dakini. Guru Rinpoche is also Dharma or the Tara. So there is nothing that you have to worry about. Of course, the dualistic mind do tend to think like, oh, Manjushri is for the wisdom. Avalokiteshvara, Jairazik is for compassion. As if Manjushri doesn't have compassion. As if Avalokiteshvara is a bit of a slow thinker. You know, Avalokiteshvara is equally, full of wisdom. And Manjushri is equally compassionate. This is all, human mind talking, but, it's understandable. We do have that kind of thing. Human beings like varieties.
Okay. Rinpoche, this is from Tsering Wangmo in Bhutan. She would like to get your thoughts on the domestic violence that has been happening towards Bhutanese women at home. Many are suffering in silence and wondering if seeking peace and freedom from their partner is being selfish.
Can you repeat that? Because there was a net problem.
She's asking about your thoughts on the domestic violence that's happening towards Bhutanese women at home. Many are suffering in silence and wondering if seeking peace and freedom from their abusive partner is being selfish.
Okay. First, I think this is where we, as a whole Bhutanese society, we need to have a real hard thinking. Of course, there's a lot of good things about Bhutan. There's a really, really lot of beautiful things about Bhutan and Bhutanese. But there's a lot of things that has flaw. As a human being, and also as a male, I should say. And many times we are so caught up with this sort of seemingly culture, tradition. It's never written somewhere. It's never written. It's never clear. It's most probably made up by some male chauvinist, I don't know, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 1,000 years ago, who knows? And that is still very much there. And I think because of that weight and that sort of social pressure, I think a lot of individuals, as this lady's question seems to indicate, there are a lot of individuals that are suffering. And I think as a whole Bhutanese society, we need to really not just speak out, not really, what do you call it, like, I don't know, print shirt or, hold a placard or, I don't know, talk about it, but we need to really, parents, friends, families, we need to really understand these things. We need to really, what do you call it, have the courage to point out that if there is any abuse, especially if it is coming from, physically more, powerful. I'm not only talking about men and women, but between children and the adults also. We need to be able to point this out. And when these things are pointed out, the way, our attitude, how we sort of chew this, how we digested this, and then how we share this. We need to, what do you call it? We need to really have a deep thinking about this. This is something that I wanted to put it out there. And this is a serious business. This is something that we have to do as a whole, as a society, as a community. Lamas like myself, we need to really have a good understanding on this. Leaders, elites, people who are respected by the society, I don't know whether they need to speak it out, or I don't know. They need to be skillful, they need to be compassionate. They can't, we can't afford to sort of get lost in this age-old habit, which is misunderstood as a culture, value, I don't know, way to do. I really, we need to sort of, we need to awaken to this. And I guess to do that, it's good that she asked this question in this kind of format. I think we need to talk more. I don't know, maybe BBS should talk about this more. Maybe, I don't know, Radio Bhutan should talk about this more. And then personally, I would say not necessarily, you should be, what do you call it? Speaking out and exposing is not necessarily being selfish. This is what I wanted to say in a, as an answer to your question, because many times I think exposing, especially for the benefit of a greater good and a longer term, I think maybe exposing, speaking it out, trying to sort it out, rather than swallowing and really swallowing day after day, month after month, years after year, and then becoming some sort of a disease. That is maybe not the right thing to do. Okay.
This question is from Cheryl Katz. Does Rinpoche recommend this practice as a daily practice, which would be the priority, practicing this or doing your Nyondro accumulations? And Rinzin Lhamo from Bhutan is also asking the same question, Rinpoche. If thinking of Guru Rinpoche as an innate, inseparable nature, part of us through all times, is equivalent to doing Nyondro in one's lifetime.
Yes. Actually, as I spoke during the teaching, fundamentally, if you are a Dharma practitioner, if you are not a Dharma practitioner, that doesn't matter. I'm not speaking to you in this case, right? But if you are a Dharma practitioner, I would really bank on, invest all your time and energy or whatever in developing admiration. I don't want to use the word devotion. Admiration, liking, I don't know, just becoming a, like fan of the Guru Rinpoche principle. Once you have that, you will automatically practice these ngondros and etc. Then those are easy. It's a bit like when you become a Liverpool fan, football club. I don't know. I think that maybe the ladies, the question is coming from the ladies, and my answer is becoming very men stuff, right? But anyway, this is all I can think of. When you become a Liverpool Football Club fan, then when you watch, how you watch, would you record the game? Would you play back and rewind old game? So boring, even if you know the score, some people still watch. That will come automatically. Okay.
Rinpoche, this question is from China. In the beginning of the teaching, Rinpoche said that everybody dies. But didn't Guru Rinpoche and Nishit Sojel attain deathless bodies?
Wow, what a good question. Yes, for the auspiciousness, I have to say yes. What choice do I have? They have achieved the deathlessness. But I need to define this. Their deathlessness is also something to do with the birthlessness. This is important that people know. The deathlessness is also a synonymous to understanding the shunyata, emptiness. When you have no more duality of time, what is death? Time is very relative. I mean, even Einstein knew this, right? But if you know that time is just a relative, it's just a projection, hallucination, imagination, death is conquered. Okay? How many more do you have?
Quite a bit, Rinpoche. How many do you want?
Okay.
This is from Juliana. Is there a way to describe the relation between the 4 activities and the body, speech, and mind?
Can you come again?
Is there a way to describe the relationship between the 4 activities, pacifying, enriching, magnetizing, subjugation, and the body, speech, and mind?
Okay. This is a little bit of a technical question. Okay. Let's talk about the body, speech, and mind first. And I'll be very brief because this is a very big subject. In the Tantra, body, speech, and mind is seen as a shell, as in eggshell. Most outer and most gross, most tangible shell, of course, is the body, obviously. There's so much limitation. I mean, if your shoe size is 42, you can't wear a baby's shoes, so on and so forth. Then much more refined shell is the speech. But when we say speech, it's not really the speech like as in sound and words and language. That also, but actually we are more talking about the prana, the air that flow. Okay, so that's the inner shell. Now there's another shell, which is really, really tough, but the most intangible, most invisible is the mind shell. And when these 3 shell, sometimes we use the language broken, hatched, broken. Sometimes we use the language ripen, but I think the Tantra, they use the word ripen. Then they function differently. They function differently. And yeah, it's very, very, okay. So it's a bit like this. Okay, so the mind, okay? So mind has a, mind is byproduct of a lot of influence, a lot of, I don't know, cause and conditions. So let's say your mind likes someone or something. Let's say a pencil, okay? Let's say you are an artist. Because your mind made you think you are an artist. And because of that, even the smell of the pencil excites you. Prana is working now. You understand? Otherwise, if you are not an artist, the pencil smell, what is pencil smell? But artists do love pencil smell. And then the whole procedure of sharpening the pencil, and then as you draw on the paper, and then the scratching, and I don't know, sound of pencil, like sketching on the paper, all of that. See, it has become gross. So this is how your pristine, clear nature of the mind is now taken for a ride, detour. And then you draw something. And then it gets printed on your local newspaper. And then it gets read by a local critic who has the loudest of the mouth. And then he gives you 2 thumbs down. Oh my God, you will be depressed. Kotang chat. This is what happens, kotang chat. And you might have, I don't know, Prozac, antidepressant, or whiskey, I don't know. This is how the body, speech, and the mind functions. I'm talking about the Tantra here, right? Now, if you can overpower this, of course, through overpowering the mind, especially, then the 4 activities gets accomplished right away. I'm just trying to connect this two. Anyway, yeah.
Rinpoche, this is from a 23-year-old Tibetan girl in Canada. I pray to recognize the true nature of my mind, and I try to practice often, but I do smoke marijuana often. I'm currently a university student majoring in psychology. I was wondering if my marijuana smoking is considered non-virtuous action and a sin. I would be grateful if Rinpoche could bestow some wisdom on this.
Wow. That needs a long answer, I feel. Okay. First of all, I have to point this out. Buddhists don't believe in sin. Buddhists believe in ignorance. If there's ignorance, that will lead you to pain, dissatisfaction, so on and so forth. Very important that you need to jot it down on your notebook, this one. In other words, anything, this is what, according to Buddhism, anything that takes you away from the truth is ignorance, non-virtuous, not wholesome. Something that you need to be aware of, something that you need to be cautious. So that could be marijuana, who knows? But that could be also, oh, I'm a Buddhist. You know, I have a shrine. I'm wearing this. Oh, you know, very proud of being Buddhist. You could be very much into spiritual materialism there. So that is not necessarily bringing you closer to the truth. You understand what I mean? Of course, I would suggest, especially with the marijuana, I think the marijuana, okay, it's like this. I should tell you this. You know, I often make joke about this, that Buddhism traveled to China, and probably it is also thanks to silkworm. You know, Silk Road, you know, so the merchants go up and down between China and India, and then somehow Buddhism arrived. And likewise, many times I close one eye with the marijuana users, because during the 1960s, many of the Woodstock and Byron Bay and Scottish, you know, all those, what do you call it? I forgot the name, Cape Town people, they came to the East in search for marijuana, and they bump into Buddhist lamas. Okay. So for me to outright saying marijuana is like the sinful, the devilish, demon, whatever, that's, I don't know, I dare not say this. But this is a public forum, so I have to be really careful. So everything what I say will get edited, pasted, put it together, and then tomorrow it will be all in the social media, which is okay. But what I want to say is this. The marijuana tend to, I think, gives you a lot of addiction, right? The whole point of us, the whole business of seeing the truth is so that we can be free, so that we can be liberated from the addiction. And we already have so much addiction, so many things. I mean, why would we want to get addicted to some plant? That also you need to, well, I understand you Canadians is legalized there, but you know, I mean, we as a Buddhist, we are supposed to be, you know, our quest is to be the master of one, you know, you are your own master. This is what Buddha said. You are your own master. So why would you want a plant to be your master? That's so pathetic. So this is something that I would say. But if, you know, as I said, if usage of these kind of substance does give you an analogy and a recognition that your mind is powerful, then that benefit I cannot condemn, or I cannot sort of outright sort of dismiss. But I would not suggest you to get addicted to any kinds of, you know, addictive substance. You know, I think it's, why not just get addicted to shamatha vipassana? It's bodily harmless. It's cheap. You don't have to buy. And it's legal everywhere. You don't have to hide. Okay, what else?
Rinpoche, there's a lot more, but there's not much time. So shall I just select 3 more questions, Rinpoche?
Yes, 3 more questions.
This is from Luciana Rodriguez. Dear Rinpoche, how can we know we are really connected with our inner guru and not being trapped by our own confused ego?
Well, a very short answer. Ask that question again and again. That is actually a sign of the inner guru kicking. You know, the very fact that you are asking this, is this my ego doing this? This is wonderful. On the day when you stop this asking question, I would worry.
Rinpoche, this question is from China. How do we use suffering to be an antidote to suffering?
Isn't this what samsaric people do most of the time? It's all our, solutions are all like that. This is why the Buddhist teachings on anicca, meaning everything is a dukkha. Solution is a dukkha, problem is a dukkha, antidote is a dukkha, but therefore we need to transcend from both solution and the problem. Okay.
Rinpoche, this is from Karen in Minneapolis. Can the Mahaguru aspiration prayer of Khandro Ishit Sojel balance the elements and pacify climate change?
Of course, I would say. And thank you for really worrying about climate change. The reason why I said, of course, is where does the climate destruction happen or originated from? From our own greed, from our own insatiable greed, and I don't know, like wanting impatience and greed and insecurity and so on and so forth. So if we could tame that, the climate change, the ecology problem can be solved. So on that note, because this is something that we should really aspire for, because I've been hearing a lot from a lot of scientists and a lot of thinkers that people are not thinking enough of the real issue. People are thinking more about things like trade, war. That's the least things to think about. The real issue that we should be thinking about is things like climate issue. That's a real thing. In about 20 years, 30 years time, I think values like democracy, universal suffrage, human rights, these will all be a luxury item, like a extra, shoes in your closet. I don't think we will have time to think about, these kind of things. We will, pandemic situation that we are going through right now, at least we can wash our hand and put on a mask, and that seems to be working. What happens when there's a climate, disaster? Wash hand, wear mask. What's that going to do? So this is a real thing. So, please put your voice. I think our leaders around the world, and especially leaders of the big, able countries, they should really think about this. Anyway, Thank you so much for listening. And this has been, very challenging time with this virus. And, there's been a lot of anxiety personally for me, but also there's been a lot of, rewarding situation. Got managed to do a lot of, like contemplation, looking inside, appreciating gurus, teachings, lineages, friends. But of course, I also have my, what do you call it? I feel anxious and I feel concerned about people back home, people in places like Bangtar, people like in places like, I don't know, Lindsay, like Bidung, all these kind of obscure places. I'm also concerned about my friends, those who are stuck in places like Siberia, Arkansas, Nagoya, I don't know, Russia, many of my European friends. Yes, we can see like this in small boxes. I have managed to see a lot of your living room and bedroom and kitchen, but somehow, I don't know, I'm a very old-fashioned. This doesn't seem right. And I hope to see all of you again very soon, and hope to actually, have a quality time in the sense of actually, meeting not through tube, but actually, human to human. Meanwhile, let us, mind is the most powerful. So if we keep on wishing, praying for greater good, I'm sure we will be, free from this kind of calamities soon. Okay, thank you.